In my first JLI class I taught, I stood by a podium teaching, but I was very uncomfortable. I couldn't pinpoint it exactly why. And I realized why. Everybody's sitting and I'm standing. Something is not working here. I felt like I'm lecturing to a crowd rather than talking with people. Okay, friends, the story begins. The next passage of Talmud that we're going to explore, which is on 32a. And we discuss the interaction between God and Moses after the sin of the golden calf. And we learn a lot over here about leadership. This is actually relevant, by the way, to an upcoming event on the Jewish calendar, an unfortunate event, the 17th of Tammuz. The 17th of Tammuz is a fast day. And among the atrocities that took place on the 17th of Tammuz, it was the siege of Jerusalem that had taken place. And that's when the Babylonians had broke through the walls to ultimately lead to the destruction of the temple 3 weeks later, the 9th of Av. But one of the earlier atrocities that took place on that same date, Moshe breaking the tablets, because it was supposed to be 10 commandments, not 15, right? That was Mel Brooks's opinion. But that's not actually the story. That's not actually the story in the Torah, right? Moshe breaks these tablets because we were sinning with the golden calf. So perhaps the sad thing was not so much that Moses broke the tablets, although that is kind of sad, but why Moses broke the tablets was the bigger deal. Now, I just want to give some context here, not directly related to the part of Talmud that we're going to analyze, but it'll give context as to, we're trying to learn about leadership from Moshe. And it's like the guy lost his cool. Came down the mountain, he saw us mess up. And granted, we've messed up catastrophically. That was a big deal. We were essentially cheating on God. We just heard from the 10 commandments themselves, don't commit idolatry, and we're committing idolatry, right? Which is almost akin to adultery because we're essentially cheating on God. And Moses is furious and he breaks the tablets. And the commentaries ask, well, wait a minute. If you analyze the text in the Torah, it wasn't a shocker. It wasn't like Moshe came down and saw us doing what we're doing and we're like, oh, Moses is not what you think. That's not what happened. Moshe knew about it. God told Moshe, look at what these people are doing. So when Moshe came down, he was warned already. So he wasn't like surprised. Why did he get so angry and break those tablets? So there's two lessons here. Number one, you don't believe bad things about Jewish people, even if God says it. That's a powerful lesson, right? That is powerful leadership. It was unfathomable in Moshe's mind. It wasn't like, oh man. But if you look at the text, Moshe was upset not only that they were sinning, but the Torah says explicitly that they were dancing around the calf, around the golden calf. They were dancing around. If you have the urge to sin, okay, I get it. We're human. We make mistakes, right? We're fallible. We're not perfect. But you're dancing. You're doing it with passion and pride, and you're enjoying it, and you're waving your flags all over. I'm gonna get canceled for this, but you're waving your flags all over the place, making a big stink out of your own sins. That's a problem. Moshe was just so infuriated by the passion and joy that they were investing in it. Okay, so Moshe then admonishes the Jewish people. That's between Moshe and the Jewish people. But between Moshe and God, the dialogue looked very different. To us, Moshe was furious. We had correction to do. But from God and Moshe's side of the conversation, Moshe was serving as our advocate. So he's playing two roles here. Right? That's incredible leadership because he cares about us enough to get angry. Yet when it comes to God, he's standing up for us. He's sticking up for us. In fact, the Zohar points out something quite interesting because it contrasts Moshe to Noach, Avram to Noach as well, but it contrasts Moshe to Noach. Let me give three leaders, right? Noach opens up shop, building this ark for 120 years, and he, God made it take that long so he could give people the opportunity to ask questions and repent, and Noach did not succeed in getting anybody to repent. Noach didn't even reach out to anybody, apparently. He didn't do any outreach. Imagine opening up a Chabad house for 120 years, right? 120 year construction project, similar to art. No, I'm kidding. but the difference is Noach didn't manage to get one person in the door other than his own family. Abraham, though, got many people through his door. And Moshe not only advocated, Abraham at least advocated for the people of Sodom. Maybe there's innocent people there. Moshe advocated for guilty people. Right? So Noach advocated for nobody. Abraham advocated for the innocent people or potentially innocent people. Turns out there wasn't any. It was similar to Gaza. No, I'm kidding. If when this goes on YouTube, they might take me down. You might not see this next. No, I'm just kidding. But then Moshe advocates even for guilty people, a whole new level. And let's take a look at the text over here. In addition, in an additional aspect of the sin of the golden calf, God told Moshe, now leave me be, right? Stop arguing with me, that my wrath will be enraged against them, and I'll consume them, and I'll make you a great nation, right? Don't plead with me. Just leave it the way it is. I'm angry and they deserve it. And I'm going to take them down and we're going to start over with you. I'm going to make you a great nation. Now, most politicians, Moshe was by no means a politician. He was a man of truth. Most politicians would say, wait, I'm getting a promotion, right? On the backs of other people. This is perfect. But Moshe was no politician and he didn't go for it, right? That's when Moshe says, erase me from your book, because if you're getting rid of them, you're getting rid of me, right? Explaining this verse, Rabbi Avohu, one of the sages of the Talmud, said, were the verse not written in this manner, it would be impossible to utter it in deference to God. The phrase, leave me be, right? God says to Moshe, leave me alone. So the Talmud says, well, leave me alone. What's the context here? Moshe was pestering God to forgive them. Right? This teaches that Moshe grabbed the Holy One, blessed be he, as a person who grabs his friend by his garment would. Right? Obviously not in the literal sense, because God doesn't wear clothing. And he said before him, Master of the universe, I won't leave you until you forgive and pardon them. I'm not letting go. I'm not going to let this one slide. Which is interesting, by the way. There's another situation in the Torah where Moshe wouldn't let God, wouldn't leave God alone, begging to get into the promised land. And finally, God said, leave me alone, and Moshe listened. But over here, when it came to the Jewish people, Moshe wouldn't listen. So when it comes to himself, okay, I'm going to respect your space, God. When it comes to the Jewish people that he's responsible for, sorry, this is non-negotiable, right? This is incredible leadership. Because, again, what would many leaders do? Send the blame downward. I wasn't there. Not my fault. Right? Dave Ramsey says, great leaders send the credit downward and the blame upward. Right? It's a beautiful line. It's really powerful. Because this is what Moses was doing. He was, or at least he was trying to prevent the blame from going downward. In the same verse, I'm going to read the next paragraph. In the same verse, God promises Moses, and I'll make of you a great nation. What was Moses' response? Now, before we get to Moses' response, what was the average person's response? What would most people say? I'm in, right? Leadership, promotion. They sinned anyways. They had it coming. Okay, you, me, God, let's elope. We're off. Let's leave him behind. That's not what Moshe did, right? Moshe said, no, erase me from your Torah. But the Talmud kind of fills us in with what the dialogue was like, a little bit more details. What was Moses' response? Rabbi Elazar said, Moses said before the Holy One, blessed be he, master of the universe, if a chair with 3 legs, the collective merit of the 3 forefathers, is unable to stand before you in your moment of wrath, all the more so that a chair with 1 leg, like my merit alone, won't be able to withstand your wrath. So Moses says to God, You want to start just with me? Well, if the patriarchs, which are three, ain't good enough, how do I know you're not going to dump me? Or you're dumping them. Maybe you're going to dump me too. And they're three, I'm one. That's Moses' reply. Okay, we're going to dive back into that in a moment, right? Circle that for a second. Let's read the next paragraph. Moreover, but I have a sense of shame before my forefathers, right? I have a sense of like I'm going to replace Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. By the way, that's again powerful leadership, humility toward the leaders that had come before you, humility toward the leaders whom you've used as stepping stones to advance. Now they'll say, see this leader that God placed over Israel. He requested greatness for himself, but did not pray for God to have mercy upon them in their troubled time. Moses says, God, it's going to look bad. Doesn't sound very altruistic. There's a interesting talk from the Lubavitch Rebbe explaining how altruistic it actually is. Because he's addressing the perspective of people. He's understanding where people are coming from, not necessarily focusing on his own desires. Let's take a step back for a second. I want to go back to this chair thing, right? God says, Moses, we're starting over with you. And Moses says, God, if a chair with three legs ain't going to stand, how much more so a chair with one leg isn't going to stand? And the commentary Rashi points out, what is this chair with three legs? The patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But I want to take a step back for a moment. Where does this analogy chair have to do with anything? What is the chair analogy? Again, when we learn the Agada parts of Talmud, the non-halachic parts of Talmud, the parts of Talmud that are halachic, that are instructional in terms of Jewish practice, are have a specific way of interpretation and are for the most part literal and need to be contextualized. The parts of the Talmud that are more philosophical, like we're going through now, and anecdotal, the sages are essentially speaking in cryptic language. And it's important that we try to somewhat decode what did the sages intend, or at least suppose what the sages may have intended. They use the analogy of a chair. But for some reason, we have this chair, and without three legs, it ain't going to stand. Right? What is the situation talking about? The survival of Jewish people. The survival of Jewish people, because God is suggesting we destroy the Jewish people. Start over with Moses, and Moses says, there was three legs holding this chair. Now you want one leg holding the chair? So what is this chair? This chair is something that's holding up the Jewish people. Well, what could it possibly be referring to? So I came across a mimer, a teaching from the Alter Rebbe, Shiner Zalman, who authored the Tanya. And in his discourses where he discusses the Parsha of Bereshit, and he analyzes the Haftorah for Parshas Bereshit, he actually talks about the analogy of chairs. Because the prophet Isaiah quotes God saying, the heavens is my chair, and the earth is my footstool. And wait, God has a chair? This chair was held up by the patriarchs. We'll soon see what that means, right? The three legs. Moses saying one leg won't work. What is a chair? God sits. Maimonides writes that one of the 13 principles of Jewish faith is that God is not a human being. God doesn't have human features. And we cannot believe that God has literal human features, even when the Torah says it, it's not literal. The Torah is speaking anthropomorphically. Did I get that word right? Okay. The Torah, say that 6 times fast. The Torah is speaking anthropomorphically. It's not literal. God doesn't have a body to sit in a chair, right? So what is a chair? Well, let's think about the concept. When you're standing up, you have a certain presence. You're kind of removed. You know what I think about actually? When we had first moved here and I first started teaching. So I taught JLI, right? That was one of the first classes I had taught here. And my first JLI class I taught, we had thank God, a good amount of people. And I stood by a podium teaching. Do you remember? Do you remember this? I never shared this before. I was very uncomfortable. I couldn't pinpoint it exactly why. And I realized why. Everybody's sitting and I'm standing. And there's just something is not working here. I felt like I'm lecturing to a crowd rather than talking with people. So for future courses, I started sitting. Maybe it's because I'm short. I'm just kidding. um, this is the real reason. But for future GLI courses, I started sitting. And I felt like I was able to present the class in a way where I'm having a conversation with you rather than preaching at you. You see the difference between standing and sitting? When you're standing, you're removed. When you're sitting, you're relaxed. You're lowering yourself down. You're a little bit more vulnerable when you're sitting down than when you're standing up. Right? What do you do to make somebody comfortable in your home? Have a seat, sit down, make yourself at home, make yourself comfortable. So when we say that God has this chair, okay, what supports this chair? We'll get to in a second. God has a chair. This chair is God coming down into our world in a more comfortable way. Because that's the ultimate purpose of creation. That's what the Torah is all about. That's what Judaism is all about. That was what the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai was. God coming down to heaven. God coming down to earth, down to this world. Right? That's why God's will is expressed in physical action. God says, I want to integrate with the physical world. That's why Torah law is so detailed. And everything is like splitting hairs, like everything in Jewish law. It's like a whole, you can write books and books on how to open a refrigerator on Shabbos according to Jewish law, right? It's like start splitting hair on what happens when you open the thing and what electricity is according to on Shabbos. Because God wants to integrate within every single detail and fabric of society of existence, physically, emotionally, spiritually. He wants to be settled here. He doesn't want to be the God in heaven. He wants to be part of the world. He is part of the world, but he wants us to experience that, to learn that, to dictate that, to practice that. That's God sitting on the chair. Right? God needs to be in this chair for right. That translates into us doing our mission. God in the chair. God being comfortable in this world. And what supports this chair? 3 legs. What supports God's presence in this world? 3 legs. The 3 legs are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The Ben Ish Chai, Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad. He was the chief rabbi of Baghdad in the late 1800s. He has a commentary on the Talmud, and specifically the parts of Talmud that are non-halachic, the Agada, the Ein Yaakov parts of Talmud. Very interesting commentary. He incorporates a lot of Kabbalah. He himself was a Kabbalist. And he writes that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob holding up the chair, holding up God's presence in this world. What does Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob represent? Those are also euphemisms. Abraham was the epitome of chesed, kindness. That's the channel of kindness, chesed. Abraham had his 4-doored tent. Abraham would travel the world. Abraham felt a responsibility toward inspiring other people with faith in God. He was the epitome of benevolence, of just giving, chesed. By the way, almost to a fault, because he didn't even want to get Yishmael, who was a negative influence on the rest of his family. He didn't want to get Yishmael out of the house until God said, listen to your wife. This ain't working. Get him out. And Avraham ended up listening. What does Yitzchak represent? the channel of gevura, the channel of discipline, the channel of restraint, the channel of boundaries, of, Yitzchak didn't never even left the land of Israel. He couldn't have left Israel. He wasn't able to. What does Yaakov represent? Jacob represent? Tiferet. Tiferet means pride and beauty. The beautiful mixture and blend between chesed and gvura, kindness, benevolence, discipline, and restraint. There has to be a balance. When you balance and blend them beautifully, you have Yaakov. Because what happens if you're too kind? Let's just say from a parenting perspective, because I'm thinking of the patriarchs as parents. From a parenting perspective, right? Abraham is just too benevolent. And it worked. He inspired his son Yitzchak, but look at Yishmael. Right? Yitzchak took the opposite approach. A lot of restraint and discipline and focus and schedule, and it worked. He had a beautiful child, Jacob. But look at his brother, his twin, Esau, who wanted to kill him. And then you look at Yaakov, who's able to seamlessly integrate both of these, right? The third level, the third leg, who's able to integrate both of these channels, both of these perspectives. And he has 12 tribes of Israel. Each of them are part of the people of Israel in their own ways. And obviously they had their ups and downs and rifts, and there was issues. There was a lot of family challenges here. But at the end, all 12 children are one of the 12 tribes that make up the Jewish people. Not the case with Esav's lineage, and certainly not the case with Ishmael's lineage. Because he was able to blend the two perfectly. But you know what God says to Moshe, or supposes to Moshe? This three-legged chair isn't working. Let's try just with you. Because what did Moshe represent? Moshe was the tribe of Levi. Again, the Levies are also gevura, restraint, in contrast to the Cohen, who is benevolence and kindness and love and chesed, and that's why, according to Jewish law, a Cohen isn't allowed to have a grudge when performing the priestly blessings. What's the blessing that a Cohen says when giving the blessings? Levarich et amo Yisrael be'ahava. They're commanded to bless the Jewish people with love. Right? Aaron, who's the patriarch of the Cohen family, was the epitome of love and peace. But Moshe, who's a Levi, is the epitome of, I'm going to say it like it is. I'm going to tell you the truth. The facts don't care about your feelings. And, Moshe was a man of God, not necessarily a man of people. And he was restrained. He was disciplined. He was gevura. And God says, maybe there's too much kindness and too much. Why don't we focus on this one channel? Let's rebuild from Moshe. Not necessarily literally from Moshe, just from Moshe himself. Like, let's kill everybody. But let's focus Judaism on being Moshe focused. Let's give everybody the truth. Just say it like it is. Be straight with people. Discipline. Because look what happens. We're too laxed. They ended up sinning. Now, if I represented a personal channel, a specific channel of whether it be chesed or gevura or whatever it might be, kindness, and God suggested that we follow my channel, we follow my way of doing things, my personality, I'd say, I like that idea. And Moshe had the objectivity and the humility to say, God, the three-legged chair isn't working. You think one is going to work? It doesn't work that way. Moshe was asserting that we need the three legs. We need diversity. We need diverse approaches. We need blends of different ways of doing things. The sages point out in the Talmud the beauty of the holiday of Shavuot, when we had received the Torah, being specifically in the third month. The first month was Nisan, that's when we had left. Then the month of Iyar, the second month. The third month is Shavuos. And it says, how beautiful is it that the Torah, which is divided into three, the Tanakh, right? The Torah, the prophets, the writings, given to a nation divided into three. Cohen, Levi, and Israel, Israelites, are given on the third month. There's something unique about three. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe had explained in one of his talks that when you're focused on any one channel, it may be correct, but it's about what you're comfortable with. If my focus, or even if I'm focused on two channels, but I'm focused on segmented paths of serving God, it ends up being about what I'm comfortable with or what my personality is, not about the truth. And Moses was saying we can't have a one-legged service, even if it's a chesed, kindness, or whatever it is. It just doesn't work. You need all three legs because nobody has everything in their personality. And if we can have all of these together, then it's not just me doing what is comfortable, it's me doing what is true. Because me doing what is comfortable can lead to all sorts of dark and scary places, false things. In order for it to be real, I got to follow what is necessary for the time, not just what is my personality. Which means sometimes I need to show restraint, even though I'm a benevolent type of person. Or sometimes I need to practice benevolence, even though I'm a more restrictive, disciplined type person. Right? Sometimes I got to go out of my box. Sometimes I need to learn how to blend the two, which is the third level. And I need to do different things that aren't within my personality. We got to go out of our personality. The one-legged thing ain't working. Even two legs isn't going to work. We need all three legs. This is what Moshe was asserting to God. And we learn from here, number one, the need to not follow our personality, but to follow what is necessary. We also learn leadership over here. I want to end off with a cute story talking about leadership. And going out of our personality to do and out of our comfort zone to do what's necessary, not just to do what's comfortable, even if it's holy. Sometimes we're doing things that are holy, but we're still stuck in our comfort zone. And it's important to leave and to go beyond our comfort zone. I think the epitome of that, by the way, is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. His personality was quite introverted. He was not known as a people's person prior to that. When the previous Rebbe had passed away, and people were pressing him, why don't you become the Rebbe? And he was getting a lot of pressure. And at some point, he said to somebody, "This isn't for me. And if you guys don't stop, me and my wife are packing up and moving to an island. We're going somewhere else because this isn't working." But eventually, the Rebbe made the decision that this is what was necessary, not even if it wasn't comfortable. Eventually, that becomes comfortable. But here's the story I wanted to tell you, a little cute anecdote. I was reminded of this because today was the 12th of Tammuz, the day that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, was released from prison in communist Russia for sharing the wellsprings of Judaism. When he had come to America, so you got to picture this. You got to picture Simchas Torah at Chabad World Headquarters. Now, Chabad World Headquarters wasn't the Chabad World Headquarters that you've seen, that huge room. It was just a small building at the time. It wasn't yet expanded. And it's the small shul, and it's Simchas Torah, and it's a couple of Chassidim and young people, and they're dancing. And there's one yeshiva student who wasn't dancing. He wasn't getting involved in the dancing. Now, the excuse of I don't dance that doesn't work. Like, what does this have to do with you, right? In Judaism, we don't dance for ourselves. We dance for a higher cause, to celebrate something higher. But what was blocking this student from dancing? His new suit. You ever do that? You get a new article of clothing, and for like the first 3 days, you can't move and then at some point you're like, what the heck, right? So he had this new suit, and he couldn't do it. Apparently, the previous Rebbe took 2 eggs, put it in his pocket, and went like this, boom. Says now you can dance. Right now you can celebrate. Now you can connect. Now you can go out of your comfort zone because you were so focused on the discipline, right? And maybe some people are overgoing and so focused on the right. We have to go out of that comfort zone and explore all three legs of that chair. Okay, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.